These are the key figures of the Decemberist Revolution. So starting up, we have Alexander the first of three brothers, and a precursor figure to what was to come with the Decemberist revolts. So Russian officials were exposed to these new ideas of liberalism in wartime, and were very encouraged to spread it to the very autocratic Russia. However, that had to wait because Alexander I just kind of suddenly died, and that created a power vacuum in royalty. I believe Alexander I only had daughters, so his death was a problem in the whole king succession field. However, that being said, his title would be handed to his younger brother, Constantine. So this is Constantine Pavlovich, and he was the rightful heir given that no one else could have succeeded him kin-wise. However, Constantine rejects all claims to the throne secretly after he marries a Polish countess and had no heirs of his own with her. He also happened to be the rank of viceroy under Alexander I, which is a powerful military rank, meaning that he had a lot of military loyalists that followed him. However, because Constantine didn't want the throne, that meant that it was going to go to the final brother and the youngest brother, Nicholas I. So Nicholas I took the throne, and that definitely had its share of issues. For one, the whole concept of this liberal Russia and these officials banded together to create a group of roughly 3,000 soldiers, and they rallied behind this idea of a more fair government Russia. And some of them even also believed that Constantine was the rightful heir, because some of the guards swore on Constantine before realizing that he had denied the throne, because this was kind of a secret before he came out publicly about it. A lot of these soldiers rallying against Nicholas I's claim to the throne were also part of these smaller groups. Some of them were the Union of Salvation, some of them were even the Freemasons. Many of these groups, again, though, were angry with the current royalty and wanted reform. Like, I know a big point of anger was actually against Alexander I for granting Poland a constitution while Russia still didn't have one. Another interesting thing of note was that there was actually supposed to be more soldiers that showed up to Senate Square. They were reinforcements in St. Petersburg that were supposed to join them, but they never actually showed up. Nicholas also sent a military hero named Mikhail Milardovich? Yeah. To publicly address and defuse the situation at the square. You know, he was a respected military figure. Surely these ex-military people would see that and calm down. No, they shot him, and he died, which is pretty sad. So eventually, Nicholas I just had to resort to artillery bombing them. And the outcome of this revolution was that it scared Nicholas I, and he kind of turned away from this modernization approach that Russia had started all the way with Peter the Great. It did force him to address some of the issues of the empire, though, so that's a plus. And finally, we have Prince Sergei here. He was a member of the Freemasons, like I said, one of the many groups that were banding together to form this Decemberist movement. And he was supposed to be their interim dictator once Nicholas I was out of the picture. However, he had cold feet during Senate Square Day. So what that means is that he didn't even bother showing up, a lot like the troops in St. Petersburg. Like, last minute, he just made a decision to not go to this revolt. And he actually ended up hiding in the Austrian embassy. However, this didn't help him, and he was eventually found there and tried.
Pavel Ivanovich Pastel was a Russian military officer and a radical leader of the Decemberist revolutionaries. He was born in 1763 and died in 1826 in St. Petersburg. After graduation, he was commissioned as an ensign for the Lithuanian Regiment of Guards. After he fought in the Napoleonic Wars, he returned to Russia and felt that Russia was less modernized than Western and Central Europe. He then joined the Union of Salvation in hopes of instituting a constitutional monarchy and reform Russia's policies, and organized a more radical Southern society. He had a plan to change the socio-economic and political sphere with the Russkaya Pravda, known as the Russian Truth. It called for the execution of the imperial family, the emancipation of the serfs, the replacement of the Tsarist autocracy by a republican form of government, and the allotment of land to the freed serfs. A day before the Decemberist Uprising, Pestel was arrested in Tulchin, when he was betrayed by a new officer in the Southern Society. He was executed a few months later. Sergei Ivanovich Murov-Apostol was born in 1796 and died in 1826. He was a Russian army officer and Republican, and he played a leading role in the uprising. He graduated from St. Petersburg Institute of Railroad Engineers and fought against the French invasion of Russia in 1812. He was one of the founders of the Union of Salvation and was a company commander of the Simonsky Guards Regiment at the time of its uprising. He played an active role in the radical anti-monarchical Southern Society of the Decemberist movement. He soon became the head of the Veselkov Council and helped merge it with the Society of United Slavs. He was part of the plan of the uprising by the military during the 1823 to 1825, eventually advocating for the assassination of the Tsar. After that, he was appointed director of the Southern Society. He organized and led the Decemberist rebellion, consisting of over 1,100 officers and the troops of the Shchergov Regiment. During the uprising, he was severely injured and later became one of the 5 Decemberist leaders that were hung. Nikolai Ivanovich Turgenev was a Russian government official and economist who was a co-founder of the Revolutionary Northern Society. This society later staged the Decemberist Uprising of 1825. He became a liberal idealist after the French Revolution. He had belonged to the Union of Welfare, a reformist society which advocated for the overthrow of autocracy. This society came to an end but broke off into secret branches, including the Northern Society. Turgenev was a writer who wrote books on taxation and serfdoms, and these books had a wide influence prior to 1825. One of these major books being The Experience of the Theory of Taxation of 1818. He was abroad during the uprising after becoming an immigrant. In 1847, he published Russia and the Russians, which is regarded as one of the most comprehensive accounts of the development of Russian political thought. Alexander Christopherovich Count Beckendorf was a general and statesman and also served as the Tsar Nicholas I's chief of police. He was born in 1783 and died in 1844. He originally joined the Russian army and helped to assassinate Emperor Paul I. He fought in multiple military campaigns and became the commandant of Moscow. During this, he engaged in battles against the French in Germany and Belgium. Later promoted to lieutenant general, he was given command of the Cuirassier Division of the Guards. Beckendorf commanded the troops that suppressed the Decemberist Uprising and later was responsible for the rebels' prosecution. He proposed a plan to Nicholas for organizing a department of political police. Nicholas then created the 3rd section of the Imperial Chancellery. Beckendorf was then placed in charge of both the Gendarmerie and the 3rd section, and he was held responsibility for the regular and secret police until his death.